Welcome to the Skull King Fantasy Football Podcast, presented by Vox DFS Firelines. Now, here are your hosts, Justin.
Stephon Gilmore go to the Patriots. Now they let Mike Gillislee go to the Patriots. Are they now just the farm club within their own division?
Greg.
He's one of these faux leading women. It's like, that's not Angelina Jolie or Jennifer Aniston. It's some girl that I would see at the Circle K. That's kind of Alshon Jeffrey.
And Ryan.
There is absolutely no reason why O.J. Howard should be drafted before Cameron Brate. All right, welcome back to another Skull King Fantasy Football Podcast tonight. My name is Ryan Skullroot. Thank you guys for joining us. With me tonight, I have Justin and Greg. And what we want to do is we want to go over a little bit of news and notes from the season, or from the day, since we actually had a show last night. It's a little weird doing these multiple nights in a row, since this is the first season we've really gotten into it like this. So we're going to go over a little bit of news and notes. And last night we covered all of our sleepers for the season. This year we're going to go into our bust picks. So first, to start off, we wanted to say make sure to go to iTunes or wherever you listen to our podcast to give us a rating. We'd appreciate 5 stars. If you want to give us 1 star, fine, whatever. Just give us a rating. We want to know what you think of our show. If you give us crappy reviews, well, fine. Then we'll know what we need to fix. So we got that. We still have our contest going for the signed Jay Ajayi or signed Martavis Bryant jerseys. The way to enter that is to either give a review / rating, screenshot it for us so we know who you are, and also to go to skullkingfootball.com and to download our draft guide to help you with your drafts this year. So now that this is draft week, this would be a good time to get it to make sure that you don't get behind. So I believe that's all I wanted to cover. So why don't we just go ahead and hop right into the news. So last night we finished off with the Lions re-signing Matthew Stafford for a record 5 years, $135 million, $27 million a year. So we go from good news last night to we'll see what kind of happens. Today, Mike Florio of Pro Football Talk believes there is a very good chance that Ezekiel Elliott plays in week 1. Do you believe that could be the case, Greg?
I mean, I guess it's certainly possibly, the case, depending on how the appeal plays out. You don't know exactly which games he's going to miss. Doesn't really change his draft position. In fact, if he were to play week 1 and still get a 6-game suspension, I would think that would make it worse.
That very well could be.
Because, you've already gotten, 1 game out of this year, that you're that further along in the season by the time the guy gets back. So I think it's the duration of the suspension is the biggest issue.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you there. I think if anything, it maybe gets shortened to, say, maybe 4 games. Most likely, maybe it takes 1 game off to make it 5. But at this rate, especially with how bad, again, we talk about how bad the NFL screwed up the whole Ray Rice situation with that. I really don't think that they're going to ease up on this, and it may take a Tom Brady type of litigation against the NFL in order for them to actually get this reduced or taken. So it's possible that he could play all year and get an injunction on the NFL so that he can keep playing. But as for right now, I still think he's going to be out at least 4 to 5 games. So moving on, Jason Lockenford of CBS Sports reports that the Browns are aggressively trying to trade cornerback Joe Hayden. The only reason I bring that up as a defensive player is that who knows what they could get on the offense to help them out, trading him away. Not that it, if they could get maybe even a secondary lineman to help, they've improved their offensive line, but to solidify that, I think that gives a boost to, say, someone like Isaiah Crowell or Duke Johnson or even Deshaun Kaiser, just so we can get a little more protection. Other than that, that's really not all that newsworthy. With the season looming, health questions come into focus for Titans wide receiver Corey Davis. He is expected to be ready for the opener. I personally am not targeting Corey Davis in any of my drafts. He is a beast, but as of right now, he's still missed so much time. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more out of him in the preseason to be able to judge whether or not I actually wanted him or not. For me, I'm not targeting him. Greg, are you looking at Corey Davis at all, even in the late rounds?
No, I don't think so, because I mean, if there's other rookie wide receivers that one could consider, I mean, not ranked too far behind him is Zay Jones, and I think as we've discussed, I mean, he has every opportunity now to be the number one guy there. I think Corey Davis is still going to be, even if healthy, Eric Decker is more than likely the guy who's going to emerge as the number one. I think he's the most viable threat in the passing game. So I would look, especially if I'm going to go with a rookie, I'm going to probably go somewhere else at this point.
All right. Next story. Looks like Justin dropped off. I think he said his computer crashed, so he'll be back on in just a second. Tyrod Taylor remains in the concussion protocol. We haven't heard anything more. There's Justin. Justin's back. We haven't heard anything more about who was their other? I think it was T.J. Yates, who also ended up being in the concussion protocol, so that Nathan Peterman was their only healthy quarterback. So we'll see. I'm personally not targeting Tyrod Taylor just because of he's lost Sammy Watkins. Yeah, he still has Shady, and he's got Zay Jones. But then, he lost Watkins. Bolden retired. He really still doesn't have a tight end. I think it's Deion Sims, I think, is his tight end, or no, it's Charles Clay, because Sims is now in Chicago. So for me, I'm still staying away from Tyrod Taylor personally.
Yeah, well, he was, no stat monster to begin with. So, kind of take some more cards out of the deck, and he's not a more appealing of a hand.
No, and really, what brings a lot of his fantasy value is his ability to run. Really, that's what really brings his value up. So,
may as well draft Kaiser then, because he's going to be running for his life.
Welcome back, Justin.
Thank you.
All right. Bills coach Sean McDermott said he is cautiously optimistic that Jordan Matthews will be ready for Week 1. So they did add Jordan Matthews to the Bills, but
yeah,
I'm not drafting Jordan Matthews either.
Yeah. Oh, look, great! Somebody brought a 12-pack of Bud Light to the party.
Joe Flacco has resumed throwing as his return to practice nears, Coach Harbaugh said. So now he's still not practicing, but he's at least throwing the ball.
That's better than Andrew Luck.
That's true. That is better than Andrew Luck. Let's see. Here's kind of to go along with our sleeper news from last night. Colts signed free agent running back Darrell Richardson and placed running back George Wynn on the injured reserve list, basically making it all that much more easy for Marlon Mack to take over once Gore goes down. I mean, not that George Wynn posed a huge threat, but he was a veteran that had played a bit in the Lions offense. And so, but he had struggled with injuries there as well. So if anything, that's more of a step up for Marlon Mack. In the really what could be considered the big news in fantasy today, the 49ers traded tight end Vance McDonald and a 5th-round pick to the Steelers for a 4th-round pick. Therefore, whoever believed in Jesse James cannot believe in Jesse James anymore.
Basically you.
Yeah.
I was not. I mean,
we talked a lot about him last year as a waiver wire pickup. This year, I was not going down the Jesse James road. That was just not a guy. He's not a guy that really appealed to me. Now he really doesn't, and I'm not taking Vance McDonald either. Now Vance McDonald he was able to make some big plays last year, but all he made was big plays. It was big plays or he dropped the ball. He is actually, over the last couple of years, has led the NFL for tight ends in dropped pass rate. It's like 15% of the passes thrown to him, he drops. That is not exactly inspiring to me to want to go out and pick him up. And let's be honest, the only semi-productive tight end that Ben Roethlisberger's ever had has been Heath Miller. And Heath Miller, it all depended on the matchup, on who they were going up against. He never really depended on Heath Miller. It was, if the matchup was there, then he'd throw to Heath Miller like 10 times in a game, and then he'd throw to him like 4 times over the next 6. So
it also depended on whether or not Roethlisberger was home or away.
That's true.
Because Roethlisberger's great at home, horrible on the road. So if you're at home with a bad matchup, still probably not targeting the tight end.
Dan Quinn has said the running back Devonta Freeman has been fully cleared from his concussion to return to practice. So he is back. Mitchell Trubisky will play in the Bears preseason finale on Thursday. I mean, obviously he's still not the starter. It is still Beaker, Mike Glennon, and it's probably going to stay that way for a little while. We'll see how long Beaker lasts with how crappy he's been playing, although he played a little bit better in the 3rd preseason game. And Trubisky's success has been against 2s and 3s. I still see them at some point in this season just pulling the plug on the whole Beaker thing and just going with the rookie to throw him into the fire. So,
yeah, I think Glennon's pulling for a torn ACL for Trubisky in the final preseason game just to solidify his spot because he knows Sanchez won't push him.
No, butt fumble's not gonna take him. So
the only people he'll be pushing are offensive linemen.
Eric Decker returned to Titans practice Tuesday after with his ankle injury. So, like we just stated earlier, Decker has a very good chance at having a semi-productive season. Again, if he can stay healthy, a productive season with Marcus Mariota throwing to him. And finally, the appeals hearing for Cowboys running back Ezekiel Elliott will continue into day 2. So therefore, it was not over today. And as far as we can see, there is no end in sight for this. So I guess we'll kind of see how this kind of continues and goes and move on from there. So for now, we are still telling you, if you go onto our website, you can actually see the article that we just posted from our running back guy, Fong Ta, who basically agrees with all of us in saying, as long as there is still a suspension in place, don't draft Ezekiel Elliott. Let someone else take on that headache. So, alrighty, well, that's it for the news and notes. Real quick, just want to throw out a quick shout-out to Vox DFS Firelines. They are getting ready for the NFL season. They are one of the best in the business in terms of providing and consulting on your DFS lineups, whether it be NFL, NBA, well, when it's that season. Major League Baseball, I mean, they do NASCAR, they do it all. So make sure to go over to voxdfs.com and let them know when you go over there that the guys from Skull King sent you. So, alrighty, if there's nothing else, we had a question come through on Instagram. Justin, go ahead.
Yeah, so a listener wrote in a question about our opinion on, and this is more draft strategy than an individual player.
Okay, not a problem. We'll take it.
About trading draft picks. Is it a smart move or dumb move?
I think it can be a smart move, especially depending on what your team looks like. Now, Justin and I have never actually played in a dynasty league. I'm waiting for the right group of guys to actually get involved in one, because the guys that I play with currently, it would just be a disaster, and I'd want to kill everyone. So
you need committed people you like for a long period of time.
Greg, have you played in any dynasty leagues?
I've only played in keeper leagues, but there was nothing available where you could necessarily trade a draft pick, or at least nobody ever did it, in the 10 plus years that that I ran that league. So I would say generally, I mean, I would personally never do it. I mean, that's just me. I'm just not big on trading picks in reality, let alone in fantasy.
Okay, well, for me, I'm a little bit more of the risk taker when it comes to that. So I would be willing to trade 4 draft picks, again, depending on what your team looks like. If your team just sucks and you've got a couple stars maybe towards the end of their career, or guys that maybe maybe moving towards falling, say like an Antonio Brown, that he's been the peak of wide receiver performance for the last 4 or 5 years. He would be a guy that I would be willing to see how many draft picks I could get out of him to move on for next year.
Sure.
Something like that. Those kind of guys, if your team is just, if you're in full rebuild mode, that's, I would go that way and just start rebuilding. You want to still try to win, but when it comes to, if you need to rebuild, do it. Take your lumps, take however many picks you can get, and move on. So yes, I am fine to trade draft picks, especially when you're in dire situations. If your team is really set up, honestly, if you've got a great team and maybe you have a couple guys that are coming up that could fill in, well then yeah, I would trade a person there for a draft pick as well. If you're middling, it's kind of up in the air. But as far as if you're in full rebuild mode, get as many draft picks as you can. If you have a good team and you can try to snipe some draft picks from guys that are a little more desperate, I'd go that way too. Know the guys that you're playing with. That's mainly what I'm saying. Know the guys that you're playing with.
Any time where you can get an advantage, I would say go for it. There are some redraft leagues that people are trading picks around because they don't like having the turn every time, so they're looking to try and move up into an earlier round and give up some later round picks. I have no problem kind of in the 4 or 5 range, maybe dropping down a little bit if I can get something a little bit higher, or grab a bunch of stuff later because I believe in my ability to draft quality later.
Yeah.
Getting a great wide receiver like a Tyrell Williams or something like that late, who's going to be able to provide for you in PPR some great stuff, and then you can maybe get a player or a draft pick or something like that. Once again, it all comes down to scenario. Anywhere where you feel you can get the advantage, go for it.
Yep. All right, so let's go ahead and hop into our busts for this year. Justin and I already know who Greg's going with, so why don't we let you just start it off, Greg, our quarterback guru, and go ahead and lay the lumber.
It's hard to say it to you guys because I know you guys are going to be upset about this, but I don't see how. I don't know. I can't see taking Russell Wilson as a top 10 quarterback, to be honest with you, and I certainly don't see him as top 5 on Fantasy Football Calculator. I think if you look back at his career, obviously his rookie season is a pleasant surprise. That's a throwaway. The second season, he was obviously underdrafted relative to what he produced, so there was a good value pick if you took him in year 2. Year 3, he blew it up at the end of the season, where he just absolutely killed it, and the NFL hasn't seen many streaks like that. Last year, he stunk out loud for the most part. So I realistically think that his actual what he's going to produce at a low is last year, and what he produces on average is about what you see in year 2, with year 3 being a complete flyer of an anomaly that you're not going to see on a team that doesn't have a running back. You have a bunch of bodies, and nobody's either going to be healthier or certainly not as good at the job as Lynch was at one point. So if I'm looking around, I like Derek Carr better. I like Mariota better. I like Winston better. I like Cousins better. I mean, I like a number of guys better by the time we get to the end of the season as far as being a chance to finish in the top 10 as far as points in fantasy.
So the fact that he was injured, pretty much the entire season last year doesn't affect how you feel about how bad his season was last year.
Well, small guys get injured. That's part of it. So, I mean, I think at some point, and that's part of the problem. Why does he get injured? Well, how much was put on his shoulders because he doesn't have a running back? That hasn't changed coming into this season.
Or an offensive line.
Or an offensive line. So, the same challenges that he was facing, he's going to continue to face, I think going into this season. So I certainly don't see a rebound to where he was 2 years ago because, again, that stretch he put on at the end of the season was was lights out, and you rarely see anything like that.
All right, Justin, who do you have for your quarterback bust this year?
I'm going to one up Greg there on the numbers of ADP. I'm going to go with Matt Ryan, and this more has to do with a regression from last year more than a flat-out bust. I don't think he's going to produce where he's currently being drafted. I don't necessarily think he's going to drop to a quarterback 2 or 3, but I do believe he is very late quarterback 1, because when you look at his stats last year, career high in touchdowns, beating his best previous year by 6 touchdowns, and he had a career low in interceptions. A very, very potent offense. We've talked. There's a change at offensive coordinator. There is a change at.
What are you laughing at?
There's Greg's beer. But there's a change in offensive coordinator. There's a change of philosophy. I think you will see Matt Ryan return back to the norm, kind of mid-20s on the touchdowns, mid to high teens in terms of interceptions, which will not be the quarterback 4. I think that's more quarterback 8 or 9-ish. So I would wait and take someone with a little bit more upside, because he is obviously not going to repeat that. His numbers will go down.
All right, so for me, my bust, and I won't go. We've talked about Andrew Luck, so I'm not even going to go there. You're not going to draft. You shouldn't be drafting Andrew Luck really at this point, because you don't know anything. So, and no news is bad news.
Yes.
In my opinion, in fantasy. So for me, my bust is number 10 on Fantasy Football Calculator, Cam Newton. And the reason I think that Cam Newton is going to be a bust is because, one, he's still having trouble with his shoulder. He's barely played at all in the preseason. Number 2, people are still trying to bank on 2015. 2015 was the outlier. It was not the new norm for Cam Newton. It was the outlier. The coaches have already said that they don't want him running the ball as much anymore. And they drafted McCaffrey to be more electric out of the backfield. They also got, Curtis Samuel? So they get those 2 guys to be able to take the load off of the run game off of Cam Newton to be able to use with Jonathan Stewart more. So for me, and to top it off, I think Cam Newton has only had 1 season of pass, maybe 2 of passing more than or having a completion percentage over 60%. Let me pull it up real quick.
That is correct. It's 2013, 61.7. Everything else is 60% exactly.
Yeah, his rookie was 60%, and that's also the only year that he has passed for 4,000 yards. So for me, again, 2015 was the outlier. I think he goes back up. I think he goes back up to that. 14 interceptions again. They're right around that 20 touchdowns. And they're going to want to keep him from running the ball as much. And last year, he did say how many rush yards, 277 rush yards last year, and they want him to do less. So for me, I have no justification for taking him in the top 10. So, all right, so there's our quarterbacks. Let's move on. Running backs. Justin, we'll start with you.
I'm going to go with Doug Martin, and let me pull my stats up on this. First and foremost, he's serving a suspension to start the season. A couple other pieces. Once again, we talk about outliers and norms. When you look at Doug Martin, 2015 was the outlier other than his rookie season, I think, in 2012. He had 14 1,200 yards, 1,400 yards in 2012. But outside of those 2 years, snuck in the middle, you've got a lot of 500-yard and less than 140 touches. So he's either very good or very bad in terms of fantasy value, and he's serving a 3-game suspension. Last year, he lost the starting job to Jaquiz Rodgers, who lit it up. And so there's a couple of reasons there why I don't like Doug Martin, especially where he's going currently. When we look at his ADP, Doug Martin is going as the running back 22, drafted in round 5. And I like a couple of other players that are being drafted after him. Players like a Michael Crabtree at a receiver position. Amir Abdullah, I like a little bit more because he will be the go-to back in Detroit, although that's still not a running-heavy game. Kareem Hunt is being still currently ADP-wise being drafted behind. Even a Mike Gillislee I would like more than a Doug Martin because he'll be there all season. And so I just don't see Doug Martin living up to the potential now with a crowded backfield.
Okay, real quick on the Kareem Hunt. I've actually adjusted on there. He is actually now going in the last few days as number 17, 312. So, all right. So I'm gonna give my my sleeper or my bust running back real quick, and then Jess, I'm gonna have you take over for a minute. I think the baby woke up. So yes, I am a parent and need to take care of the little kid, but these two guys will take good care of the rest of you guys while I'm taking care of him. So my running back bust for me as of right now is probably going to have to be oh man, there were so many to choose from. I think I'm going to go with Carlos Hyde. The injury history is undeniable. He is a gap runner who cannot get into, who cannot
find the gap.
Who cannot adjust his running style. He is one of those guys. He has to be like the old Adrian Peterson style. Line up 8 yards behind the line, get a full head of steam, get the ball, and then hit the gap. He is not a wait and find the gap as you go in a zone blocking scheme like Shanahan runs. So I have Carlos Hyde, not making it halfway through the season, let alone being productive in that offense. So, all right, Greg, why don't you go ahead and give us your running back bust, and then if you guys, when you're ready, go ahead and continue on, and I'll try to get back in here.
Yeah, so mine, and again, when I look at bust, I'm looking at always, relative to value and where that player is taken. And for me, it's Melvin Gordon at the number 4 running back overall. First of all, Devontae Freeman, who's listed a pick behind him on a fantasy football calculator. At what point has Melvin Gordon outproduced him in the last 2 seasons? So why would we think it's going to happen this season? I mean, granted, you could have hey, I just got the big contract, I'm not going to play as hard bit, but Devontae Freeman hasn't struck me as that guy quite like Doug Martin did. So I think that Melvin Gordon, to me, represents a huge risk there. He's closer to a bottom 10 running back for me. If you actually look at the revised list, I would kick Ezekiel Elliott out of the top 10, and Melvin Gordon's pretty close to that too. He played durability is an issue. Last year he played 13 games, but he had like 45% more carries last year than he did in his rookie year. So he had all the opportunities in the world. He still didn't hit 1,000 yards. He's under 4 yards a carry. So the biggest change last year for Melvin Gordon was after a rookie when he couldn't get into the end zone once. Last year he found it 10 times on the ground and twice through the air. Average those things out over 2 seasons, he's a 6-touchdown guy. I certainly don't think he's a 10-touchdown guy. So I'd stay away from Melvin Gordon, at least as far as drafting him that high.
Okay, moving on to the wide receivers. My bust is DeAndre Hopkins. Once again, we're talk about it, norms and outliers. And looking at the stats, this is going to be his 5th season in the NFL. In 2013, he had 52 receptions in his rookie year. 2014, he had 76 receptions for 1,200 yards and 6 touchdowns. In 2015 was the big breakout year of 111 catches and 11 touchdowns. Last year, regression back to kind of that 78 range with only 4 touchdowns. I think you're looking at more along the lines of something along this in terms of his production in being a 78 catch, maybe 4, 5, or 6 touchdowns for DeAndre Hopkins, because I just don't see Houston blowing the lights out in the passing game. I see them more game clock management because Savage and Watson are not going to be heavily relied upon, I don't believe. I think they're going to lean a little bit more on Lamar Miller, even though there's talk that they overworked him last year. But I think they will take pressure off the quarterback and rely more on the running game, which does not bode well for DeAndre Hopkins, who is currently being drafted as the 15th receiver off the board with the 7th pick of the 3rd round. I do like other receivers going after him, like a Demaryius Thomas, a Michael Crabtree. I'm high on Devontae Adams, even though some others are not. And then there's Larry Fitzgerald, Father Time there, who's going to continue to get catches as the number 1 receiver there in Arizona.
Yeah, I agree. I think DeAndre Hopkins. You do have that outlier year, and what you haven't had since that is consistent quarterback play. And I think his ceiling goes up once Watson's in there, but that's something that you're gonna have to wait till late in the season to even hope that produces. And so I don't think you can take him nearly that high in the draft. Certainly not 1 pick behind my boy Terrell Pryor, which those guys are not even in the same league as far as what I'm looking at going into this season. For me, I'm waffling on this a little bit, but I'm going to go back to the well. I've been right on it before. I think I'll be right on it again, and it's Dez Bryant. We've got 7 years in the league. 2 of them are borderline appalling. 1 of them is mediocre. 1 would be level 4 wide receiver, and then 3, he was a legitimate number 1. So you have a real mixed bag there. You have had health issues in the past. You've had whatever other issues that come along with being Dez Bryant. And I certainly did not see last year anything that struck me as some kind of overwhelming level of chemistry with Dak Prescott. Now, I think Bryant has a little bit more value in the period that Ezekiel Elliott misses time. But I ultimately think that you do see Dak Prescott going elsewhere with the ball, which makes it tough for me to take Bryant as a number 8 wide receiver, according to Fantasy Football Calculator. I'd rather have Amari Cooper behind him. I'd rather have Brandon Cooks, to be quite honest with you, with Tom Brady than I'd like to have, Dez Bryant. And again, some of this is just bear it out over the stats that you've seen in their careers up to this point. These guys with, checkerboard performance, that's not going to suddenly change because you picked them. Which magic box did they land on this season? And if it's in your favor, great. But if it's not, you spent a huge draft pick relative to somebody else that you can get, in that same position who's going to produce as much, if not more, with maybe less risk.
All right, moving on to –
Wait, I'm back.
Oh, you're back. Okay, we're still on wide receivers. So who's your wide receiver bust?
Who'd you guys pick? Dez Bryant and
DeAndre Hopkins, who was my bust last year as well.
Good work. Right. At least we got a few things right. Okay, so for my bust, gosh, I've had so many to choose from. It's it's like rolling a dice really as to which one I actually want to pick. I think for me, I'm probably going to have to go with Keenan Allen. And again, I think he's been he may make it through the entire season. If he doesn't make it through the entire season, I would not be surprised though. If he does make it through the whole season, I think that he could have some injury issues that could hold him back, and I don't think that he is going to provide wide receiver 13 value. Making it through the whole season. I mean, I understand that Phillip Rivers is going to try to depend on him a bunch, which, as we have seen the last few years, Keenan Allen is going to get hit a lot when that happens, and he hasn't necessarily been able to take the punishment. And so for me, drafting Keenan Allen at number 13 is just, to me, seems ludicrous with having missed basically the entire season with the ACL. If he was more like 2025, I would be better about it. But at 13, I don't see him producing wide receiver 13 value. So, all right. Now we can move on. So we're moving on tight ends now?
Yes.
All right. So the tight ends. Greg, you get to go first. Who's your tight end bust for this season?
It pains me to do this as a lifelong Notre Dame fan. But there is no way in God's green earth I would ever draft Tyler Eifert, period, let alone as the number 6 tight end. What in the world has he done to possibly warrant this? 4 seasons in the league, again, an every other year performer. So based on this year, he should come close to playing a full season. Now, the last time he came close to playing a full season, he racked up 615 yards. He did have 13 touchdowns. But if you look at the other 3 years in the league, he had a total of 7. So people, talk about outlier performance. Eifert's always had all the talent in the world. He's incredibly physically gifted. But just like certain other tight ends that I'm sure could be talking about later, we may or we may not, this guy's always on the injured list. He's on there today with what is unidentified tendinitis. Does his cervix hurt? What exactly is the unidentified tendinitis? Where is it at? This is absolutely ridiculous. So I would not. There's just no way I'm touching Tyler Eifert. There's no way. Absolutely not.
Oh, that's that may become your new comment for in our intro.
Nice.
Instead of talking about Alshon Jeffrey being the girl that you see at the counter at the Circle K, I may have to be talking about Tyler Eifert's cervix. So, Justin,
I thought we were a family show.
Families involve the cervix, Justin.
All right, Justin, why don't we go ahead and go to your tight end bust for the.
I'm going to pull a little bit of a wild card here. And go once again kind of around the same range that Greg went, the tight end that's being drafted just behind Tyler Eifert, and that's Delanie Walker. And there's a couple of reasons for this. When you look at Delanie Walker's stats and his career, outside of 2015 when he caught 94 passes, he has not caught more than 65 catches or had more than 800 yards. He had 7 TDs, 4 TDs. He's kind of a very serviceable late-round tight end. There's a lot more firepower now with them adding Corey Davis, Eric Decker. They're looking to be a little bit more involved with DeMarco Murray and Henry. So I don't know if the same volume is going to be there for Delanie Walker. In addition, he has had a history of injury issues. And in the last, throughout his whole career, he has never had an entire season where he started the entire season.
Correct.
And so it's not only that in the last 4 years, he's missed at least one game. He's only, in his career of 12 seasons, he's only had 3 full seasons. And in most of those, he starts only half or barely over half of the games in that span. And so I don't know if he would be dependable enough to start every week for the draft price that you're looking to pay. I've liked him as someone I would grab a whole lot later and then draft a second tight end. That's the only reason the only time where I would feel comfortable with Delanie Walker, especially now with him getting even older. And I don't see him returning to the 94 catches anytime soon.
I'd have to agree with you there. And I think one of the things that people tend to forget is that, who was their running back in 2015? Exactly. They had like 4 or 5 different running backs that year.
Bishop Sankey.
Yeah, Bishop Sankey was supposed
John
to be.
Green.
So they had. It was Marcus Mariota's rookie year. They had no one else for him to throw to, in terms of wide receivers. They had no running game. So Mariota was forced to throw the ball over the field, and Delanie Walker was the one that was there. Now he has they depend on DeMarco Murray in that power running game. They have Derrick Henry to back up DeMarco Murray. Then they add Eric Decker, Corey Davis, Taywan Taylor just this season. And they still have they've got a couple guys that are okay, but you look at the other weapons that they've added, plus they're a power running team now. That it's not a great spot in my opinion for Delanie Walker. So I kind of like that pick. It hurts me to say it, but I kind of like that pick. All right. For me, my sleeper at tight end. I mean, there's so many injury-prone guys on here to go with. I'd probably have to go with. Yikes. Oh, why don't I just say it? Rob Gronkowski. He is my bust pick for tight end.
That hurts me. I've got him on 2 of my teams.
Why?
Because when he's healthy, there's no one better.
Okay.
He'll be the only tight end who can get 3 touchdowns and 100 yards in the game.
Okay, so let's pull up his career stats here. Rob Gronkowski has played a full 16-game season twice. He's played a 15-game season 4 out of his 7 seasons. He's played 11, 7, and 8 in the other 3. He has had, let's count up all of his injuries. He's had 3 back surgeries. He's had a torn ACL. He's had a shoulder surgery. He's had a punctured lung, in which he was grounded and couldn't even fly to San Francisco because they were afraid that if he got on a plane that he'd have some issues with his lungs. So you take into account all those, especially, most importantly, those 3 back surgeries. He gets hit from behind once, and I think he's down again. So that is a risk I am not willing to take. So for all those people that love Rob Gronkowski, love taking the big tight end, you go right ahead. I am not touching him. I think he's a bust this year. I do not see him lasting the entire season. So, all right. So that's it for me. You guys, did we have? I'm trying to see. Nope, we didn't have any other questions. It looks like so. No one posted on Facebook for questions. No one posted on our Twitter for questions. So I guess that is it for tonight. We will be back. We're still trying to figure out what tomorrow's episode is going to be. And I believe it's just me tomorrow night, isn't it?
Yes.
So.
I have another draft.
So Justin's got another draft. Greg has other obligations that he needs to take care of. So it looks like it'll be just me tomorrow night. Maybe if we can no, that won't work. So what we'll do is we'll just see. I'll post a whole bunch on Twitter and Facebook just to try to get some questions about maybe draft strategy or whatever to go for the game, and I'll just kind of for the year, and I'll try to do like a little bit of I'll go over some news and try to do like a grab bag kind of an episode. So
call it a potpourri like they do on Jeopardy.
A potpourri.
Potpourri. Everybody likes potpourri.
So yeah, tomorrow night, it looks like we'll probably do a bit of a kind of a potpourri type of an episode, a little bit of grab bag, try to answer as many questions as possible. So I will post on Facebook and Twitter to try to get questions in for that. Unfortunately, I do not have the capability to also do Instagram because Justin does that through his phone, so we won't be able to have Instagram involved in that one, but maybe next time. So if there's nothing else for me, Ryan, and also for Greg and Justin, this has been the Skull King Fantasy Football Podcast. Thanks for tuning in, and we will talk to you guys later. Hey, Skull King Nation, thank you for listening to the Skull King Football Podcast. Did you like this episode? If so, be sure to go to iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and YouTube to subscribe. Also, please leave us a rating and reviews to let us know how we can better help you rule your leagues.